Hi, folks. Welcome to class. I am running everything on my own, which is a number of things. I have to run the video, which is what I'm looking at behind me, and I often forget to unmute myself. So I just wanted to double check that I'm not on mute, which I think I'm not. Two, Scott's out of town, and so I'll be teaching both halves of class today. So we'll see what things I get to do that maybe I never get to do when Scott's here. I don't know. And then the third thing is there's no one to distract the kitten. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but we'll see. There might be moments that the kitten makes an appearance. I have a little toy in my pocket, so hopefully I can maybe. He just left. He was very active down here, and then he was like, whatever, and left. So maybe we'll be fine. Hopefully you have a chair. I've got a stool here, something that lets you put your feet on the floor um, without your knees being like way up towards your chest, and preferably something that has a pretty hard surface so that you can feel your sits bones. So not like super cushiony, maybe a dining room chair or a folding chair, like a card table chair. Or if you have a little stool like this, that would be great. And then we're going to start sitting right up on your sits bones. And I always come a little bit forward to the edge. So our tendency, obviously, in chairs with backs is to lean back. It's kind of a normal thing. It's inviting you to do that. It's not great for your back or your posture, your hip flexors, all sorts of things, right? My hip flexors end up grabbing a lot to kind of hold me in place because my weight is behind me. So, but it's okay sometimes if you're relaxing, but not for class today. So when I go super far back on the chair, then it sort of cuts off at my thigh too, and I don't get any weight in my feet. So I want to go forward. I want to be able to feel my sits bones and have to line my body up over my sits bones. And then I also want to really feel like my feet could take my weight easily if I needed to. Like they're a part of the equation there too. So find that setup for yourself. And then we're going to start with the feet and working the feet around. So just lifting one heel and lowering the heel down, very simple. And then lifting the other heel and lowering the heel down. So a lot of times when we do this, we always do the more is better thing, right? Or we tend to do the more is better thing. So we push super, super high, so we really feel it in the ankle and maybe even really feel it in the foot. Go to 70%. So that your toes can stay spread out on the floor and you really can feel the whole ball of your foot on the floor. You're not pushing way forward in the ankle and you're not crunching up the toes. So we're trying to open up the ball of the foot, not the ankle. And maybe get the muscles in the arch of the foot to just start to warm up. When you go super high, it just tends to bypass all that. And maybe you can even feel like you can get a little bit of that push through the ball of the foot and the toes spreading out into the floor if you keep the heel a little lower. And when I push into that foot, I feel it go directly into my pelvis. Like if I push with my foot, it rocks my pelvis a little back. And as I release it, it comes forward. We want that connection, the feeling of the foot up the leg into the pelvis. And then let's do the other, which might mean you need to slide your feet forward a little bit, but pulling the toes up in the ball of the foot. So the heel's down and alternating that movement. And notice as you do it, if your toes, again, get really crunchy. And also that you're trying to come up evenly, not turning in or out in the foot, but just right up through the front. So there's a muscle, the tibialis anterior, along the front of your shin. That should activate to lift the foot up. That's the muscle that is the shin splint muscle for people. If you are someone who's had shin splints or you know what that is, that muscle will start to get overly tight sometimes and it'll pull away from the bone. This is just really gentle. So you want to feel that muscle. It's fine to feel that muscle. Just kind of warm it up. And then we're going to go side to side. So rolling to the outside of the foot, the pinky toe side down, and trying not to open your knee as you do it. That's the hip moving, not the foot and the ankle. Keep the knee in so it's really at the foot and the ankle. The arch of the foot having to come on and lift a little bit. Place it down and then take the other foot that same way. And it might be helpful to look down at your feet. So if I ask you or anyone asks you to do something that is hard to feel and you don't have a lot of coordination, then it's helpful to look at it. That seems to help proprioception especially out in the distal ends, like hands and feet. So it's fine to look down. It tends to help you activate what you want to activate a little more or release what you want to release. And then it can also be good for integration to not look at it, just depending on where it is for you. So we're going to take the opposite movement now. So the pinky toe side comes up, the big toe stays down, the inner edge of the heel stays down, the knee doesn't fold in, stays right here. So now I'm getting these muscles along the outer part of the lower leg. Some of you may know those as peroneus brevis and longus. Other people may know it as fibularis brevis and longus. Other people might just know it as muscles on the outside of your shin. I'll accept all those answers. And then same thing, what do your toes do? They get all over the place. It's fine. Probably for a lot of people they do. Try not to overdo crunching in the toes. Now, we're going to slide your feet back just a little bit so your knees are slightly forward of your ankle. If we want to shift your weight onto your feet to stand up, which is the next thing we're going to do, we need your knees to be able to move forward of your ankle a little bit so we can distribute the weight a little more. So again, it's helpful to be right on the front edge of your chair. And then start with feeling the movement at the hip and the hip joint or the pelvis. So if I think about where my sits bones are, I'm going to roll forward a little bit on my sits bones. I'm going to make a deeper crease, a deeper bend in the front of the hip. And then I can push with my feet a little bit and I come right over to upright again. Now we want to distinguish this from just the chest coming forward or the ribs popping out in the back arching. Really think of, here's your pelvis, you're going to roll your pelvis, you're going to turn it forward and down. And you'll feel yourself on a different place in your sits bones, more on the front edge. And then you're going to turn it back to upright. And as I go forward, I let my feet spread into the floor a little more. And then I push just a little with the feet to come back. And try not to do too much grabbing right in the front of the hip. See if you can feel the movement coming all the way down from your feet. And then next time you roll the pelvis forward, you're going to stay a little forward. Send your knees more forward. Send the top of your head more forward. And come off your chair. You're in a little squat. And then pressing all the way up to standing. And then we can work with that same movement. So my hips are going to fold. My sits bones are going to reach back. My knees are going to go forward. And maybe all the way back to the chair again. You could put your hands back. Or if you just want to go down and up without going to the chair, that's fine. Because sometimes it feels like you're not going to find it, right? Sits bones don't have eyes, so it's a little tricky. But see if you could make your sits bones feelers. Stay in your feet and all the way back down. Play with that movement a little bit, up and down. Trying to connect the foot all the way through the ankle, knee, and hip into your pelvis. And then next time you're all the way up, let's stay standing. And then we'll get rid of your chair. Take that off to the side. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to feel that connection all the way through from the sole of the foot up the leg into the hip and the pelvis. Now, all the time in Pilates, we talk about the lower belly. So that's also really helpful, right? As I work my way up the leg into the pelvis, we're going to start trying to feel some work into the lower belly too to support that whole chain. So let's start with one foot just a little back. So I have both toes pointing straight ahead. I have my hips pointing straight ahead. I have just a little bit of that tone in the belly, like you do in knee folds. Just a little support, wider in the lower abdominals. Tiny bit of work, not a huge amount of work. And then really feeling the push from the foot that we were playing with on the chair. So I'm going to start pushing my back foot, the toes down. I'm going to do the heel lift we started with. And about that high, right? I'm not trying to push like super high into the ankle, just a little bit up so my toes keep spreading out. So the ball of the foot pushes down, the toes spread out. I lift the heel, which moves my pelvis forward. My pelvis is supported by my abdominals. Small movement, right? I'm not going very far in space, but my energy has a long pathway, right? My awareness is really covering a long chain from my toes to my abdominals. And just like when we were doing the sitting to standing, you don't want to lean forward to do it, right? Leave your pelvis behind you. Or arch your back. Or shove your pelvis and not bring your chest. Whole thing. Really nice upright posture. And then the next time you come forward onto the front foot, we'll stay there. Take a little more focus on the front foot. How are you lined up over that foot? Bend your front knee. And as you bend your front knee, your back heel is going to lower down. Maybe to the floor, maybe not. And then straighten your front knee. The back heel is going to lift. Bending the front knee, knee goes forward. Little bit of abdominals as you straighten. So both feet working slightly differently, connecting you all the way up into your spine. I keep sneaking up a little higher, right? Connecting into your pelvis, into your abdominals, into your spine. And then next time you have the front leg straight, we're going to stay there and then play with taking the weight off the back foot, shifting a little more onto the front foot. However much balance you want to do. You could keep your toes down, you could take your leg off and find that place. And then glide your foot back, toes down, bend your knee. So now we have that slightly longer progression. Front foot presses, back heel lifts. Slide the back foot forward into some balance. Glide it back, toes down, heel down, front bends. Play with that. One more time. And then coming back together. Okay, so let's go through all that on the other side. So I'm going to slide my other foot back, not very far apart, not a stretch. I'm not trying to get a stretch necessarily. You might have a little stretch in your calf, but you don't need to. I don't necessarily have a stretch in my calf. And then hips really pointing forward. First thing we do is feel the back foot, the toes spreading out, the ball of the foot spreading out. And then with that feeling, push as the heel lifts, the pelvis moves a little forward. Little bit of tone in your belly. And then back down. Easy chest, neck, ribs. You might notice a difference between this side and the last side. I do. I have a little less control with this foot. When I push, I feel a little wobbly. And also like a little more tense. So then that gives me a little bit to play with. Just observe the wobbliness, spread out my toes a little more. Notice if my back starts to grip. It eventually starts to resolve. So next time you're forward, staying there, noticing the front foot a little more. How's your weight on the front foot? You're going to bend your front knee, send it forward. As you do, your back heel glides down. And then press the front foot, the back heel lifts. And exhale. And inhale, push. And bending. And press, spread out the toes. One more of these. And then we'll start to play with the balance. So from here, feeling your weight more on the front foot, glide your back leg in, however much you want to balance. Glide it back behind you, toes down, front knee bends, heel drops. And then playing with that, both feet press. And forward to the balance. Still a little bit of belly. Nice, easy, long spine floating up out of the pelvis. Last one of these. And then stepping together. Okay, so let's make our way down to the floor and do a little bit of work that way. So start with your feet a little separated, hip distance apart. Bend your knees. And then, maybe that's a little more meaningful with all this work we've done. That sometimes as you bend your knees, you might pull your pelvis forward, or you might slide it back. You might tighten your lower back. We've been doing all this work to connect your feet to your pelvis and your belly and your spine. So when you bend your knees, your heels stay down, your knees go forward, and a little bit of the release in your hips, feeling like the pelvis just settles really heavily onto the thigh bones. And then in that position, let's start some movement with the spine, rolling down. And here too, notice if your pelvis starts to tuck or arch, or if your legs start to straighten, that's really common. Leave them bent. Leave the feet heavy and spreading out on the floor until you've rolled all the way upside down. And once your hands reach the floor, if you'd like, you can make the legs a little straighter. But you don't have to. If it doesn't quite work for you, if you're a little tighter. And then from here, coming to the floor, stepping back to hands and knees. And then setting up here, hands under your shoulders, knees under your hips. And let's start a little bit of work in the spine here. So let the legs be relaxed now, the feet be relaxed. But keep a little awareness there. When you relax your feet, do your toes turn in and your heels turn out? That's pretty common. Can you keep your toes pointing straight back? It's a little bit of work maybe to do that. And then what are your ankles like? Do your feet cramp? That happens to people a lot in this position. If you can start to release your ankles and think of also relaxing the arch of your foot, that can be helpful. If you just push your feet down or your ankles down and you don't think of also softening in the arch of the foot, that's where the cramp comes in. But if you can think of relaxing your shin, your ankle, the arch of the foot, and the top of the foot. It's usually helpful. And then as I'm doing that, I'm noticing like, oh, there are my lower abdominals. Like sometimes it just works. You relax the feet and the shins and the lower abdominals wake up. Now, if that didn't happen to you, that's okay. You could wake them up on your own. Sometimes you need an alarm clock. And then from there, let's start moving the spine. Tail drops, head drops, ribs float up and shins stay relaxed. And then take it the other way. Let the tail come up and the chest open. Just simple. Just the same quality of movement you had when you were moving your feet. You're not necessarily trying to push to the biggest range of motion here. Just trying to find some fluidity, some breath, and notice the indirect effects. Like if you push as far as you can, it often tightens in your shoulders, or your feet turn in, or your pelvic floor tightens up. So if you keep it mid to high range of motion, or just mid range of motion, then you often get a more integrated movement. You don't have to go back and do that later. And then coming to flat back position, let's walk your hands a little forward and take the round spine to the extended spine out into a cobra or a swan. So you can watch if you want, just rounding the spine a little bit and then keep sending the pelvis forward. Now you could think of your shins and the tops of your feet lightly pressing down to send your pelvis forward and then unrolling your spine until your chest opens. And then feel your hands do a little mini elbow bend, like little mini push up here. Feel that weight. And then keep that sense of weight as you reverse it. Head drops, chest softens, upper back rounds, all the way back to your hands and knees, round position, and then back to neutral. So play with that movement. Exhale, rounding the spine, a little push in the shins, rolling through and opening the chest. Little mini push up with the hands. And then reverse it. Articulating through the spine. And release. One more of those. Exhale. Rolling through. And bend. And press. And reverse. And this time as you reverse, keep going until you end up all the way back on your heels in child's pose. And then roll up to sitting. And let's flip over. Coming back onto your back. Knees bent, feet flat on the mat. And take a moment to feel your back body really relaxed on the floor and lined up. For me, when I do standing work first, I am really focused on my posture and how my back body feels. And I have no feedback, right? Like there's nothing my back is touching. So it's always really interesting to me to do the posture work standing or upright first and just get my internal mechanisms going. And then by the time I get to the floor and I'm lying on my back, it just has a really different richness. I've got the internal awareness of my back, and then I also get some external feedback, and it feels like everything just sort of settles. So let's take a minute here on your back. Notice your breath. And then we're going to go back to that idea that your feet move your pelvis. So in this position here, as you push into your feet, probably what you feel is your pelvis tuck, like you were about to go into bridge. See if you can find that connection. And then release your pelvis. And instead of pressing your feet down, think of pulling your heels to your sits bones and feel how that takes your pelvis the opposite way. So if I'm thinking of like dragging my foot in, my heel towards my sits bone, I'm not moving it, but that's the direction, then a lot of times you can get that arch in the lower back. So it's cat-cow again, right? So press the feet lightly, feel how it pushes your pelvis into more of the tuck, and then release that push and pull the heels towards the sits bones. A little bit of a rock there. Then release the pull, and then start the push. Medium range of motion, right? Big range of motion is probably going to make my neck and jaw grab, probably going to make my hips grab. And then see if you can feel the in-between place, the neutral position of the pelvis. You're not pushing back, you're not pulling forward. You're thinking of the back of the pelvis, just wide and grounded on the floor. Feel what that's like. Maybe you have a little more awareness of the back of your pelvis. Maybe a little different feeling through the legs and the feet. Now let's take your hands behind your head. Elbows a little lifted up. So instead of pushing and pulling with the feet, instead of tucking and arching with the pelvis, we're now going to try to keep it still and really be aware if we have some of that movement happening unintentionally, right? So we're going to do little crunches. Very often with a crunch, pelvis tucks. That's pretty common. The feet push. So now you know what that is. Can you let that go? Just move the upper body. And do you feel how that gets you more into your deep belly? Maybe into your ribs, maybe into your low belly. But if you can get the pelvis in place, you'll get deeper into your deep postural abdominal muscle. It's tricky though. It takes a little practice. Exhale. Coming up. Stay here for a moment. Let the pelvis settle a little higher. Keeping the pelvis and the feet out of it. Coming back down. A couple more of those, exhaling. And last one of these. Pause at the top, do another breath cycle. And then all the way back down again. Okay, so find a way up to sitting. I'm going to take the cat toy out of my pocket. Famous last words, but I don't think he's coming back down here. So I'm just going to get rid of that little kitten toy in my pocket. So up to sitting, right? All the same stuff. I've got this left foot in the mat, knee bent, hands holding the back of your leg. Now you probably know what's coming. We're going to round the spine just like you did in cat-cow. Find that nice, open, gentle rounding of the spine. Different than the chair, right? Now you're behind your sits bones. Now you are in that leaned back position, but you're supported from your abdominals. And then also the push of the foot into the floor. Now we're holding the back of your leg, but that push of the foot down should activate the hamstring, should also push the thigh forward a little bit. So you want to find that connection, that as you push your foot, it tucks your pelvis. Now, keeping the connection and the intention of that feeling, we tip the pelvis a little more so the foot comes off the floor. I didn't lift the foot off the floor, I just tipped the pelvis. Still pushing forward like my foot wants to be on the floor, but I'm rolling back. Now, see where you can control it. Where's the place where it feels like, I'm about to fall? Stay there. And then find it. Foot is seeking the floor. And then that rocks me back up. So let's take it a few times. Find your gently round spine. Feel how the foot pushes, and that helps tuck the pelvis. The hamstring pushes into your hands, and then the pelvis wins. Pelvis gets to rock back a little more. Take a moment at the transition and see if you can just change the intention. Foot's going to win. One more time. And then all the way up to sitting. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. One thing I like about that, when I take that awareness, my opposite leg actually stays a little more relaxed. Maybe you noticed that, maybe not, but you might pay attention this time. Okay, so other foot, we know we push the foot and then that helps round the pelvis. So we have that feeling of pushing the foot and letting the pelvis drop back a little, holding the back of the thigh. That foot pushing also helps activate the hamstring. And then just a little more intention at the pelvis to rock back. The foot still thinking about the floor, still moving in that direction, but rocking backwards at the same time. Stop at the transition moment, re-energize the push from the foot and the leg so that you can tip forward. And 2 more of those. Notice your breath. Maybe you notice that straight leg on the floor. Can you keep releasing that? And coming up. So both feet on the floor, knees bent, feet flexed. Now, it's a little different when I flex my feet than when I push my foot into the floor, for obvious reasons. I don't have the whole sole of the foot on the floor. But I can work in a similar way to think of my heels grounding into the floor. So if I think of the heels pressing down, maybe a tiny bit pushing forward as they press down, maybe a tiny bit pulling in. Sometimes I think about feathering the clutch on a standard transmission, which I learned to drive when I was a little older. I'm not a little older, like 25 or something, but I felt like I was a little older. I wasn't 16. But there's that little bit, you have to be really like attuned with your foot to get the, I don't know, transmission to go into gear or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what's happening, but that really like moderated feeling of one foot going down in the accelerator and the other leg coming up. It's a little bit like the nuance of my heels here. Sometimes they need to push down, sometimes they need to push forward, sometimes they need to pull back. And all those things relate to my belly pulling in. So just see what that image is like for you. Leaving both feet down now, trying to work really gently with the heel, maybe sometimes a little forward, sometimes down, sometimes back. You can have hands on your legs. As you transition, same thing. What do you need? I need heels down and forward to come up. But you might do better with heels down and in. See what it's like. A couple of these. And you can't be too tense at your ankle either. If your ankle's pulling really hard or your toes are pulling really hard, you won't get that nuance in the foot. One more time, and let's take it all the way back to your back. All the way down. And take a couple breaths here, just lying on your back. Breathe into your belly. Let your legs relax. What does your spine feel like now? My spine feels a little more open than it did a minute ago. It's all that movement rounding the spine and opening the back. Now let's play with that same idea and the heels as we go into single leg circles. So we're going to go to that slightly bent knee position, not so bent that my whole foot is down, but definitely bent, right? I'm definitely having to work a little bit and think about it a little bit to hold my knees up. And then I have this nice nuanced sense of the heel and even how much I flex, right? Like there's a range in that. How can I do sort of a medium lift of the toes, flexing of the foot, so I'm not too tight in my ankle. Now the leg that stays down on single leg circles is going to stay like this instead of being all the way down. Can you feel your left heel connect to your left hamstring, connect to the left lower side of the belly, maybe even the left ribs? So again, connecting all the way up like we've been working on. If you can't feel it, don't force it. Just imagine it. Let the feeling come to you. It'll come. It'll show up if you just stay with the image of it, the awareness. We're going to take the right leg up in about that same position, that kind of bent knee position. Now, can you feel how the left leg has to work a little more, just a little differently? If I were standing up in this position, I definitely feel like the left foot would have to do a lot to maintain balance. Starting your leg circle over to the left, around and up. Trying to keep the left knee in place, not rolling out and in. Trying to keep the pelvis in place, not rolling side to side. Nuanced heel and foot. Deep work in the belly. Try the reverse. Two more. And then relax both legs. And then let's do that again on the other side. So both knees bend a little. Now maybe you felt in that leg that was, lifted and bent that your hip flexor was grabbing to do it. That wouldn't be surprising. A lot of people feel that. And it's not what we're going for, right? Like if I can get the heel, hamstring, belly, I can do a little less in my hip flexor. A little bit of hip flexor is fine, but it needs to be combined with that other stuff. So let's see what it's like on the other side. Setting yourself up with the left leg up. Reaching over to the right. Nice grounded right heel, right belly, right hamstring. Not rolling your knee in and out. Leave it in place. Reverse it. And then again, relax everything down. And just let it all hang out for a minute and breathe into your belly. And then, however you like, transition up to sitting. And I think we're ready to do some sun salutations. So let's work up to standing, over onto your hands and feet. Take a little stretch up with your legs. And then bending your knees, rolling up to standing. All the way back. Feet about hip distance apart. Notice your knees bending and straightening a little bit, right? We've been doing all this work, feeling the foot connect to the pelvis, feeling how bending the knees a little just gives you some more information. So that's still true as we go into the sun salutations. And as you go forward, probably your knees are going to bend a little bit for a lot of people. As you come up, they're going to straighten. So this movement will be in there. So let's see. So we're going to take an exhale to go up. An inhale to go forward. Knees can bend. An exhale to lengthen the spine, still feeling the feet. And an inhale to fold. An exhale to come up. And an inhale to lower. I'm reversing that. Not reversing that. I was thinking about the reverse breathing. Doing it again. Exhaling up. And inhale forward. And knees can stay soft as you lengthen the spine. Long reach through the head. And then folding down. Exhaling up. Feel that moment as the legs push. And back down. One more like that. And relaxing here. I haven't really done that reverse breathing. I see Scott teach it all the time, and I don't do as much yoga as I used to. So it's really interesting to work with that breath going the opposite way. I wasn't great at it. I'm just going to say, maybe you've had that experience. It takes a little bit of time, probably. We'll work that out. So let's go into right foot or left foot turned out and right foot turned in. So again, where's your awareness in your feet? Outside, inside, toes, heel. And that feeling of weight dropping through the feet, a little softness in the knees, not pushing and locking back into the knees, but feeling like they have a little fluidity. You have just a little bit of sea legs, right? And then easy released hips, a little bit of belly. Bend your left knee and push to straighten. And exhale, bending. And straightening. So early on, we were sitting on the chair. I said fibularis muscles / peroneus muscles / muscles on the outside of your shin. This leg here is making that action again. It's getting longer through those muscles. Not by moving my foot, but by moving my shin. Last time, keeping the knee bent. Feeling how both feet really support the weight of the pelvis. Tipping your pelvis. Forearm to the thigh, and then reaching the right arm up. And turning to look at your hand if you like. And coming all the way back up to standing. Okay, so left toes turn in, right toes turn out. Take a moment, feeling all the edges of the foot, all the toes on the ground. Little looseness in the knees, not too tight. And as I do that looseness in my knees, it makes my hips let go a little more. And then trying to keep that as you bend. Exhale. Long outer shin muscle to keep that outside edge of the foot on the floor. Exhale, bend. And inhale, push. A little bit of belly. And one more time into the bent knee position. Once you're there, check in again, especially this back leg. It likes to lock out. Feel both toes, or all the toes, both feet on the floor. And then shifting the pelvis. Left arm up. And then if you like, turning to look at your left hand. And then coming back up to standing. So let's both play with both feet turned in a little. Now, turning our feet in is not an action we talk about as much in a lot of movement practices, doing the internal spiral in the thigh, what we call medial rotation in the thigh. So for a lot of us, just taking your feet forward is a pretty good amount of internal rotation in the thigh. And there's some release that has to happen in the back of the pelvis to do it. If I'm going all the way to slightly turned in the foot, really having to turn those thighs in. And you might even do what I'm doing, like roll it in a little bit more. So either one is fine, I think, toes forward or toes a little bit turned in. And then that outer edge of the foot, right? I've got this length again happening, but I don't want to roll into my feet. I'm using that ankle movement there. I also don't want to lock into my knees. That's going to put a lot of pressure on the ankle. Hands on your hips, take a little reach up. And then coming forward, wherever you like. Hands can go to the floor, knees can bend however much you want. Really feeling the feet holding the weight of your pelvis. Take a moment and feel a long feeling in your spine. And then let your spine drop forward. And have your hands on the floor in some way that's comfortable. Maybe it's your fingertips. If it's your whole hand, that's great, but not pushing super far back with the hands. Just let your whole hand engage easily with the floor. And then however much you want to bend the knees or straighten them, that allows you to keep the whole foot grounded and really fold at the pelvis. And then lengthening your spine out again. Feet are going to support you. Feet press into the floor as the belly comes on. Hands come to your hips. Coming all the way back up. And then let's step back to the front of your mat. And we'll get down to the floor. So exhale, reaching up. Inhale forward. Exhale, lengthen. And this time, back to downward dog. And I can't believe we've taken this long to get to downward dog, because what a great place to think about your feet. The toes spreading out, the ball of the foot really pushing, and then allowing the heels to just fall with gravity. So it's not necessarily about pushing the heels down, I don't think. I think it's about spreading the toes, being really
connected through the ball of the foot and the toes. How does that help you find your long spine, released hip, lifted belly? And then just relax your ankles. See where your heels go. Gravity does the rest of it. And then coming down to hands and knees. And a moment back in child's pose. Rolling up to sitting. And I feel like we should do a little twisting. Scott loves to do twisting, so, you know, we got to keep his brand going just a little bit. So we'll take both feet out. Bend your right knee. If you want, right foot goes here. If you want, right foot goes here. But can you get your whole foot on the floor in whatever position you choose? And if it crosses over your leg, again, you've got a little bit of that ankle movement that has to happen to get the whole foot on the floor. It's a little straighter here, a little easier to feel here when you keep the foot in place. So sitting up, elbow to knee, left elbow to the right knee, rotating around. And then coming back to center. Let's take the other side, bending the left knee. Maybe it goes across, maybe not. Right elbow in your left knee. All of that helps me get on my sits bone a little more, especially that left sits bone. It's really prominent as I, right? Whether it's hand or elbow, as I draw that in, I can really find the left sits bone. It gives me some clarity. I don't have to pull my chest up. I just have to drop my sits bone down and feel how the spine can float up. And then coming back to center. So let's do just a minute on your back, a couple minutes on your back. And we've done this a few times during class, right? Just settling, letting things integrate. So take a moment, however you like, knees bent, feet on the floor, legs straight, arms open, hands on your belly, but supine, which is a fancy way to say on your back. Your eyes can be closed or open. I often like to have my eyes open. And just observe. Don't do anything. How's your body feel? What's worked? What's relaxed? What's the quality of energy? And as you become a little more present with your body, then also just become present with the room. What are the sounds? What does the floor feel like underneath you? Not blocking anything from your senses, but also not clinging to any of those things. And then whenever you're ready, you can bend your knees, place your feet on the floor, and come on to one side. Then use that to transition up to sitting. So thanks so much for being here today and staying with me till the end. You might be like, wow, that was really long, 30 minutes Collette taught, but just kept going, right? I'm going to look at questions for a moment just to see. Great. So it doesn't look like there's any questions. Just a couple comments. So yeah, thanks for being here. Scott's going to be here next week, and we'll be back to our normal goofy selves, and maybe a kitten. There was a special appearance by Ruthie Cat. I don't know. You don't get to see Ruthie Cat that much, so this was quite a day. Yeah, have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week.